This is a world ravaged by monsters, where humans are as weak as ants, but there is a great wall that splits the world in two. Inside the wall, life is full of energy, and at any time you can taste delicious tomatoes. Children run freely with no worries, they dream about the future, and play without fear. If there's any trouble at all, it's only the surprise exams that make them frown. But outside the wall is nothing but endless ruins. Not a trace of human warmth remains, only wild-growing plants and flocks of crows that bring bad luck. And the people trying to survive out here can only search desperately for houses that haven't yet been ransacked. They're lucky today, they find a tightly locked house, smash open a side window, and start searching every corner. Soon, the boy finds an unopened pack of toilet paper, and they're overjoyed, because in this ruined world, every single supply is as precious as gold. Upstairs, they make another discovery, but it wipes the smiles from their faces. It's two perfectly preserved dried-up corpses, hands clasped together, a clear sign that there's no food left in this house. This is how most people end up after disaster strikes, and at the next house, they're just as unlucky. No food, no hope. With no other choice, they open a can of food they'd been saving for years and gather some wild greens from the roadside, hoping to balance their nutrition. But the taste is so terrible they both wince in pain, and even the precious canned food is ruined by it. That night, the girl stares at a cherished photo of two men, her longing written all over her face. The boy, seeing her like this, can't help but ask, so she confesses. The people in the photo are her dearest friends, and finding them is one of the reasons for this journey. When morning comes, they keep moving toward the railroad, hoping to meet other survivors, and before long, they do. But those they find are a group of robbers, not friends. It's clear that trouble is coming, so the girl pulls out a strange-looking pistol, but the robbers just laugh, thinking it's a toy gun. Suddenly, the fight explodes. The boy's strength is unbelievable, dodging every attack and cutting down his enemies with ease, while the girl finally reveals her true power. She fires the pistol, and a beam of light shoots out, slicing a power pole in two, leaving the robbers so terrified they surrender on the spot. The survivors are taken as prisoners to the robbers' hideout, where they even force the robbers to recharge their batteries using the gang's own generator. With the threat of that high-tech pistol, the robber's boss can only give in, and when the batteries are full, he can't help but ask who they're for, and learns, to his shock, that these batteries are actually the secret behind that terrifying pistol. This world is broken, and the relationship between people and animals has turned upside down. Against mutated animals, humans are as weak as ants, struggling just to survive, yet somewhere there is a paradise, filled with tomato plants and happy children, each with a special gift. Some can leap from tall buildings without getting hurt, some can see the future and prepare for surprise exams in advance. The exams begin, but for Shixiong, the test comes with 11 extra questions, including one that asks, "Do you want to go outside the outside?" The question is so strange he can't forget it, and after the exam, he asks Mai Meiji, the girl who can see the future. She calmly takes him to the foot of the giant wall, because in her mind, she always sees the same image. Every time she wants to go outside, two people will come in from beyond the wall to help her, and one looks exactly like Shixiong. Faced with such a bizarre situation, Shixiong can't sleep, so he sneaks out to the wall, but just as he leaves the building, the principal appears with two others. Shixiong asks his burning question, but the others try to hush him. However, the principal isn't worried and answers directly, explaining that outside the wall is another world, a filthy land full of hideous monsters, yet even in such misery, people struggle to survive. Now, a brother and sister have been walking all day, exhausted and hungry, but they don't give up, and maybe their determination moves the heavens because they stumble across a hotel that's still open and even accepts old paper money. While checking in, the girl, Janzi, asks the landlady for news. She desperately wants to find the two men in her photo, but after checking all the registers, there's no trace of them. Disappointed, she still thanks the landlady with a pack of unopened size 5 batteries. After checking in, they decide to take a bath first, but when Janzi looks in the mirror, she can't help but feel emotional. When they finish, the landlady has already prepared dinner for them, and as they eat, they talk about their stories. The girl Janzi is a bodyguard on a mission to escort Zhenliu, who himself is searching for a place called Paradise. After dinner, Zhenliu falls asleep early, and Janzi is also suddenly overcome by drowsiness and drifts off without meaning to. But the landlady doesn't sleep. She loads a gun, and soon a giant, bizarre, hideous monster flaps up to the window. The sleeping girl suddenly wakes up, drenched in cold sweat. There are eyes rolling around on the window, staring right at her, and as she grabs for her gun, a gunshot sounds from outside. The monster vanishes, and realizing something is very wrong, she rushes to wake up Zhenliu. But Zhenliu is totally dazed, clearly drugged, and just as he's coming to, the monster appears again. The monster appeared, creeping slowly toward the two as they prepared for battle, every nerve on edge, but the creature didn't bother with any fair play. It launched a sudden sneak attack. Luckily, Zhanzi was cautious enough not to let it succeed, and with a sharp move, she exposed the monster's true form. It was actually Gigi, the crow-headed guy. Right then, Zhenliu tried to test the waters, but Gigi's attack was unbelievably fast, as if he wielded a 5-strand lightning whip. Cars were just explosives before him. Faced with such a powerful enemy, Zhenliu and Zhanzi could only dodge and hide for now, but Jige had no intention of letting his prey escape. Zhanzi's weapon, however, was was no ordinary tool. One shot blasted off one of Jige's wings and snapped his lightning whip. Now was the time to push their advantage. So Jianzi hid in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment. Just as she was about to strike the final blow, the landlady suddenly burst from the bushes, stopping Jianzi's killing attack and rushing to shield Jige, treating him like her own child. Her real child had been eaten by Jige 2.5 years ago, so from then on she saw Jige as a replacement son. But Jige had no feelings for her and coldly swallowed her whole. Such a monster was unforgivable. Zhenliu, empty-handed, rushed forward, dodging the lightning whip again and again, finally getting behind Jige. Then he felt a surge of energy in his body, which turned into a giant hand that crushed Jige's remaining wing. The monster fled northwest, filled with regret. As dawn finally arrived, Zhenliu and Jianzi continued along the railway, hoping to find the paradise from Zhenliu's memory. But ahead was a wide river. They had no choice but to cross it, so they built a simple wooden raft and set out to sea. As they drifted farther and farther, a scary thought struck them. What if the water was full of sharks or crocodiles? But turning back was impossible now, so all they could do was paddle with everything they had. Meanwhile, a boy was running an experiment, standing on a robotic vacuum as it whirred to life and lifted him higher and higher. But the machine's power was limited. He suddenly crashed down, causing a group of friends in white coats to scream in fear. Yet the boy got up as if nothing happened, while the white-haired boy nearby, holding a girl in his arms, got a nosebleed, instantly becoming the star of the scene and making everyone laugh. But Mei Meiji, the female lead in all this chaos, was lost in a bad feeling, sensing that something was about to fall from the sky. The scene shifted back. Zhenliu and Jianzi made it to the other shore, finding a manor that might be the paradise from Zhenliu's memories. To be safe, Zhenliu handed Jianzi a syringe filled with medicine and told her if she met anyone who looked like herself to inject them. Maybe it would save that person. Jianzi fell into memories of a woman whose body was covered in black spots, the one who gave her the high-tech pistol, begging her to escort Zhenliu to paradise. As her thoughts returned to the present, they saw several people waiting at the manor's gate. After explaining themselves, they were allowed inside and met the head of the manor, who said it was built after the disaster. Life here looked good, but Jianzi felt a strange, twisted vibe, and nobody recognized Zhenliu, which meant this wasn't the paradise they were searching for. Still, just as they were enjoying a meal, a villager recognized Jianzi as a former cart driver, with rumors saying he'd run over his own younger brother in a race and gone mad. Jianzi flatly denied this, refusing to admit he was the driver, and the villager left, disappointed. Then Zhenliu noticed a strange mark on a nearby box. It was identical to the emblem on the high-tech pistol. They asked about it and found out it had come from Tokyo. With no other leads, Zhenliu and Jianzi boarded the manor's cargo ship, hoping to return to Tokyo and find clues about Zhenliu's origins to help them reach paradise. Zhenliu, though, wasn't really interested in finding paradise anymore. He just wanted to live a good life with Jianzi, so he launched a fierce confession, but Jianzi turned him down. In her mind, she was always a man, even though her body was female. In this post-apocalyptic world, the orphanage made a living by sending the stylish girls to race cars while the boys looked after the base. It was a way to survive, but far from easy. Luckily, the team manager Robin came just in time to save Haruki, who had nearly been silenced for good. Haruki, brave but a bit reckless, earned Robin's praise and received his favorite jacket as a reward. Meanwhile, big sister Tongzi returned from her race but had crashed and failed to win a title, though she was safe thanks to the ever-watchful doctor. However, there were rumors the doctor was secretly studying man-eating monsters and conducting human experiments, so Robin was keeping a close eye on him. That night, all the adults headed out. There had been sightings of man-eating monsters. Haruki, hearing this, grabbed his homemade weapon and chased after them, scaring off one of the monsters but getting scolded by Robin for his recklessness. Haruki always felt overprotected and a little sad, but he wouldn't miss his sister's race for anything. From the top of the tower, everything was under control. Haruki took out his binoculars and watched his sister quietly, but a strange noise drew his attention. He spotted the invisible monster from the previous night lurking at the finish line. He raced down the tower, hoping to stop the race, but it was too late. The drivers were already tearing down the track. For his sister's safety, Haruki tried to drive the monster away before the cars arrived, focusing all his senses on the slightest movement around him. The monster finally revealed itself, and Haruki shot a steel spike, slightly injuring the creature. Not stopping there, he took off his beloved jacket, drew a dagger, took a deep breath, and stabbed straight into the monster's brain. Though he hit his target, the attack only enraged the monster, which sprouted tentacles from its face and wrapped them tightly around Haruki's arm. No matter how he struggled, he only sank deeper into danger, now completely at the monster's mercy. Haruki was now just a dish on the monster's plate, while on the other side, Tongzi, who was in the lead, had just driven into the accident scene and spotted the man-eating monster. She quickly got out of her car and tried to stop the race, ready to drive away herself, but at that moment the monster turned around, revealing the half-devoured body of Haruki. There was no time to think. Tongzi floored the gas pedal and rammed the monster, all to save her foolish friend. Everyone thought this woman had gone completely mad, because as soon as she woke up, she claimed to be Haruki, her brother, who everyone knew Liu had already died in the monster's jaws. People just assumed she'd lost her mind after her brother's death and was confusing herself for Haruki, but only she knew the truth. She really was Haruki, and after gaining control of her sister's body, she felt sensations she'd never had before. She desperately wanted to find the doctor to ask why her consciousness had ended up inside her sister's brain, but after the operation, the doctor left the city and was nowhere to be found. 4 months later, her sister's body was finally healed, and as soon as she was discharged, she set out to find Robin because he'd been investigating the doctor's real identity and might have clues. But when she arrived at the Racing Association headquarters, she was crushed to learn that Robin had disappeared after looking into a missing persons case last year and was presumed dead. Devastated, Haruki ran back to the orphanage, only to find it abandoned. Luckily, after asking some passers-by, she learned that the others had simply left the city and that Robin's whereabouts were still unknown, meaning there was still hope he was alive. Grasping at this last straw, Haruki believed that as long as she could find Robin and the doctor, she could finally get all the answers haunting her. So she changed her name to Janzi and set out, hoping to find them while taking on jobs, and that's how she eventually met Liu. But after hearing Janzi's story, Liu felt even more unsure about how to face her, especially after seeing her face. So he just wanted to sleep and avoid reality for a while. But suddenly, a scream came from nearby. The window of the ship revealed a man-eating monster, a giant fish covered with human arms, crazily crawling along the hull, its hungry eyes fixed on the people inside. Janzi, who'd fought these monsters before, wasn't about to just sit and wait for death. She quickly drew her high-tech pistol and fired, filling the air with smoke, but the monster was completely unscathed because its body was covered with thick, muddy slime that not only gave it extra protection, but also let it move outside water. But this was also its fatal weakness. If it lost its moisture on dry land, it would be helpless. With this in mind, Janzi decided to lure the monster inside the boat, and the creature, desperate as a pig seeing a fairy, chased after her but couldn't catch up. In frustration, it launched another attack but missed again. Janzi and Liu made it to the lower deck, the monster hot on their heels, but the big door at the end wouldn't budge and the monster kept getting closer. Still, Janzi was completely calm. The monster's arms started to shrivel, and even the slimy membrane was vanishing fast. The giant fish was now nothing but a beached, helpless creature, just as Janzi had planned. She'd lured it here because it was so dry, with plenty of cardboard boxes and desiccant, and the monster was so dehydrated it was no threat anymore. Then, with Liu's help, it was sent off to paradise. After the danger passed, everyone safely reached shore, and as thanks, the captain pulled out a wad of cash for Janzi, who declined it and instead asked about the emblem on her gun. The captain didn't recognize it, but one of his men insisted it was the mark of Sanye and showed them the way to the Sanye ruins. When Janzi and Liu arrived, they were disappointed to see the Sanye emblem looked nothing like the one on the pistol. Though frustrated, they had to laugh at the man's confidence. Meanwhile, the school was just too cool. Every student had their own special power, but everything they did was under the teacher's watchful eyes. So even if they discovered secrets, they were extra careful. That day, Jiuju took his senior to see a secret he'd found. He scaled the tall wall like it was nothing, but not everyone had his skills, so his senior used a robot vacuum to get up too. Strangely, on the cameras, they seemed to disappear completely, not leaving a trace. Crawling through the ventilation duct, they slipped into the nursery, where rows of babies with no legs or features lay, and the senior couldn't stop staring. Suddenly, an alarm sounded, and the senior froze in panic, unable to move. Luckily, nothing happened, but they couldn't stay there long. With Juju's help, they escaped through the vents just as the teachers arrived, having been alerted by the nursery's alarm about an intrusion. But after checking, nothing was missing and the cameras showed no sign of anyone. Even the school's smart assistant, Minna, was stumped about what went wrong and could only stare blankly at the principal. Even though the two seemed to have vanished without a trace, the babies in the nursery remembered them well. Life went on as normal, but after class that day, Mai Meiji was dragged into a dark room by Beige, and her senior eavesdropped outside listening to Beige's impulsive confession. Lost in thought, he wandered the campus until he ended up at the bedside of Duo Liangnan, whose body was covered in black spots, comforting him as best he could. Duo Liangnan knew exactly how bad his condition was and wanted to resolve his deepest regrets before the end, but at the last moment, his senior broke free and ran away in a panic. Kunai, who had been quietly drawing, noticed something was wrong and followed him, trying to comfort him. The senior felt overwhelmed by all the changes lately, and Kunai gently explained that it's only natural for people to fall for one another. Everyone feels that urge. Hearing this, the senior finally shared his secret. If he ever truly liked someone, he hoped it would be Kunai. To his surprise and delight, Kunai felt the same way. This was a love that went both ways. That night, as the senior drifted off to sleep, still wrapped in that happiness, his room filled with the sound of a special broadcast. It was Duo Liangnan, gravely ill, asking to see him one last time. When the nurses left, Duo Liangnan grew angry about what had happened that day and warned the senior to escape because he knew just how dangerous this place really was. They say playing games is the best way to heal a broken heart, but Liu couldn't find any joy, not even while gaming. Some punks nearby tried to pick a fight, but he ignored them and instead asked for advice about his feelings, which only angered the punks and led to a scuffle. Zhenliu was in no mood to take abuse. He kicked back, but the punks weren't weak either. One of them kicked out his tooth, but Zhenliu stayed calm. After all, these guys were nothing to him. Just one look and they were running scared. Still, as Zhanzi, his sister, arrived and knocked out the fleeing thugs, she reminded him that if they called for backup, things could get messy. When she turned to lecture Zhenliu about finishing the job, she noticed his tooth was missing and rushed to check, which embarrassed Zhenliu, so he quickly pulled away, pretending it was no big deal and saying it would grow back soon before hurrying back to their temporary home. To find clues about paradise, Zhenliu kept digging through his memories. He was born after the catastrophe, raised in a decent room by adults until age 7, then sent to another group when the place was shut down. But after less than 3 years, that group's leader was killed, and Zhenliu was taken in by a big vigilante group where he met San Kang, who taught him how to kill the Zizi. But oddly, San Kang himself didn't know that method, and whenever he looked at Zhenliu, it was with a cold, objectifying gaze. Other than that, Zhenliu couldn't remember anything useful. Zhanzi, feeling helpless, decided to put the search on hold for now and filled her backpack with novels and comics from the next room to sell for essentials, warning Zhenliu to burn the useful ones after reading, because in this shelter, hoarding knowledge was more profitable than sharing it. Zhanzi went out alone since Zhenliu wasn't in any shape to be outside. As expected, thugs outside were still looking for him, but not too seriously, since even if they found him, they doubted they could beat him. Their real worry was about the Fuxing Province organization. But when Zhanzi found the door open, a sense of dread washed over her. She went inside and found the room empty. Zhenliu was gone, her face filled with terror, hands trembling. Something awful had happened. She'd only stepped out briefly, and now Zhenliu had vanished, a thunderbolt in her heart, because she'd come to rely on him more than she realized. In her despair, suddenly the door to the next room opened. It was just a false alarm, but Zhanzi needed to know what Zhenliu was doing in there, and it turned out he really was tinkering with a plane. As someone who thought of herself as a man, Zhanzi understood, but it made her realize just how much Zhenliu meant to her. She never wanted to come home to an empty house again. The thought of being alone brought her to tears, but human sorrow is never the same for everyone. While Zhenliu tried to comfort Zhanzi over in paradise, everyone was singing and dancing, though the doctor in a white coat felt out of place and started examining the students' shoes. Earlier, while collecting data in the Yuying room, he'd noticed footprints on the wall. Clearly, some students had entered. He questioned the students, who explained they were trying to use their singing to wake Duo Liangnan, who was terminally ill, but their efforts were in vain. Duo Liangnan passed away on October 16th, Tianrong, year 17. The funeral the next day weighed heavily on every student's heart. He wasn't the first to die of illness, and the last Asu Luoer had died from a strange disease too. That mysterious illness haunted everyone because any student could be next. The principal exploded at this suggestion. He couldn't delay the arrival day and was desperate to find a cause and cure before then. Meanwhile, after the funeral, Shixiang was vomiting in the restroom. Could he have the strange disease too? No one knew, not even Zhenliu, who only cared about the next step on their journey to find Tianming. As the two discussed their plans, a knock came at the door. Someone had been following Zhanzi, hoping to hire them as bodyguards for himself and his luggage on a trip to the immortal cult. It was said a brilliant doctor there could transplant ZZ parts into humans to achieve immortality, methods suspiciously similar to the ones used on Zhanzi in her surgery. The doctor hurriedly took out a photo to ask, but the person before him only knew vague rumors and could only give them the address of the immortal cult. He didn't even have any useful ZZ body parts left, as what he'd prepared had already rotted away. Left with no choice, Zhanzi paid for the information, and now their destination was set. Meanwhile, in paradise, the doctor made a major discovery and rushed to the principal, dragging him over to Duo Liangman's rack, where something unknown was still left behind. What kind of promise had the girl made that the man beside her would leap from a high platform without hesitation? It all started with that map. Following its clues, Zhenliu and Zhanzi arrived in a small town and quickly found the location of a completely safe water source. Just as they were about to leave, a girl called out. She ran an inn and wanted them to stay. Zhenliu flatly refused, but seeing the girl's pitiful face, Zhanzi changed her mind and checked in, just so the girl could earn a bit of money in this wasteland city. Zhenliu worried their things might get stolen, but Zhanzi wasn't concerned. After all, there was nothing valuable in their luggage. Soon, they went to the underground entrance where the safe water source should be, but it turned out to just be a flooded old building that didn't look clean at all, so they searched around hoping to find the real source. Inside, they found an injured man. Zhenliu rushed over and recognized him as a punk from the tent camp. The man kept mumbling about his companions being attacked by a monster. All his friends were gone, and there was indeed a monster lurking in the corner. No time to think. The only way out was to run. The monster chased them to the surface. Zhanzi spotted a tall concrete pillar nearby and fired 2 shots at it. When the monster got close, the pillar collapsed, smashing it senseless. Now it was Zhenliu's turn, but the monster wasn't phased and soon woke up. They realized this wasn't a ZZ, but a bear with bushy eyebrows. Thankfully, they climbed to a high platform platform in time and escaped. The bear couldn't climb up and eventually wandered off, but they had to wait on the platform until evening when the air turned chilly. The bear eventually left and they planned to go, but before leaving, they needed to warm the battery for the ray gun to make sure it would work. But accidents happened. Zhanzi dropped the battery from the platform. Now what? After some agonizing, Zhanzi made a desperate promise. If Zhenliu went down and got it, she'd let him touch her chest. Hearing this tempting deal, Zhenliu jumped down without a second thought, grabbed the battery with a flurry of bold moves, but just then the missing bear appeared again. It had never really left. Fortunately, Zhenliu was quick and scrambled back up to safety. When the bear finally left, Zhenliu seized the chance to go down and Zhanzi followed. With that reliable man by her side, she landed safely. But the bear returned yet again, and this time Zhanzi pressed her gun right to its head, finally scaring it off for good. The two returned to the inn, and it was time to fulfill the promise from the platform. Zhenliu could barely wait to touch her chest. After so many years together, tonight seemed perfect. But at the crucial moment, the innkeeper burst into the room and shouted at them to stop, because the rules clearly said not to dirty the mattress. Then, the innkeeper took Zhenliu next door and revealed his real intent. He wanted Zhenliu to have sex with him for 800,000, or at least give up his solar lamp. The owner even rummaged through their belongings and could have just stolen the lamp, but insisted on paying with sex. He even grabbed Zhenliu's hand, and when their hands touched the woman's body, something strange happened. Zhenliu's hand went straight inside her, an effect only seen when touching a Zhizi. Shocked, Zhenliu lost all interest in anything else and screamed, calling Zhanzi over to witness this bizarre scene. The woman explained everything. She wasn't a scammer, and Zhanzi became curious about her story. The innkeeper was an orphan, raised by thugs after the catastrophe, and her dream was to collect all the clean mattresses she could and become the greatest hotel tycoon of the apocalypse. But the next day, she was like a wilted eggplant because her boss had died, unable to survive the bear's attack. Seeing her pitiful state, Zhanzi offered some sympathy and invited her to join, but the woman refused, perhaps unable to leave her home. After a health check, Zhenliu was relieved to find he hadn't caught Duoliangnan's strange illness, though the medical robot advised him to get some rest. The senior always felt someone nearby and saw Asuluo, who died years ago, hovering in the air, asking if he had any special skills, but before he could answer, Asuluo vanished. Waking from this dream, he found new flesh had grown over his legs and spread to his whole body, but it was just a nightmare. The doctor came to check on him and, more interested in his shoes, compared the shoe prints to those found on the wall of the Yuyan room. They matched perfectly. The doctor wondered why no one else had noticed, but he would have been more shocked if he'd known the senior wasn't even in his dorm but sneaked into Kunai's room instead. For Zhanzi and her brother, being able to kill monsters was the only way to survive in this wasteland, though every region had its own names for the monsters. Some called them Zhizi, some called them something else. So they wrote down every local name for the monsters. ZZ, 10-man monster, whatever people called them, ready to see what would bite, because their real goal in coming here was to find the so-called immortal cult, a group rumored to transplant ZZ parts into humans, and the chief surgeon was likely the very person Zhanzi had been seeking. That night, the immortal cult noticed these two strange newcomers, and just to be safe, reported it up the chain. The doctor was especially eager to meet anyone who could kill a Zhizi, but when they arrived at the two's lodging, it was already empty because a group had come and brought Zhanzi and Zhenliu to a coffee shop where anti-human experiment protest placards were stacked and all kinds of people sat together. Zhanzi was only interested in whether the rumored surgeon was the one she had searched for, but was disappointed to meet Dr. Yu Zuomei, who was much younger than the one in the old photo. It turned out this wasn't the immortal cult, but rather a group called Living People who opposed the cult's experiments, led by a woman named Mizuhashi. She had once gone to the cult for treatment, but they cut off her lower leg and replaced it with a metal prosthesis. She said Dr. Yu Zuomei did that to her. This kind of surgery, using machinery to patch up dead or damaged body parts, had existed even before the apocalypse, and some took it further by putting human brains or memory data into robots, chasing immortality, but ethical concerns had kept such ideas in check before the world fell apart. Now, in a lawless age, those ideas flourished unchecked, and Mitsuhashi had seen Yu Zuomei's work firsthand. Inside, a white tent, an experiment ladder had been sliced open and kept alive by countless machines, begging to die. A human dignity crushed, yet people still worshipped the cult fanatically. Below the cult's headquarters, they even raised man-eating monsters to experiment with fusing Zhizi and humans, and they had brought Zhanzi and Zhenliu to kill one such Zhizi. Not all parades and drumming are for celebrations. Sometimes they're to attract attention. In this absurd age, it was just part of the plan. The parade would draw the cult's guards, while Zhanzi and Zhenliu slipped into the base to hunt the Zhizi kept in the underground garage. But once inside, they were surprised to find the garage bright as day, powered by generators, probably to keep the Zhizi alive. The place was eerily quiet. After searching, they finally found a Zhizi in fake death state. If not, they would have thought it was a trap. Killing it didn't end end things, though. Another one appeared, and then they realized there might be more. Searching further, Janzi found the GZ Queen, starving and nearly dead, but now she had 2 fresh meals. The marks on her face suddenly lit up, and a small monster climbed up a pillar. Soon, more came crawling from everywhere, and before Janzi could react, one from the ceiling pinned her. Zhenliu was knocked down. When Janzi got free, she found herself facing a giant abyssal mouth. She fired her gun, but it did nothing. The monster drew closer, her bullets useless, and all that awaited her was that mouth lined with sharp guillotine teeth. In pain from her severed arm, Janzi could only scream for Robin, just like she did back when she was Haruki. But once again, Robin didn't appear. She was eaten alive. Just as she thought she was dying again, she suddenly woke up, her mouth locked with Zhenliu's, as if he was the fire demon clinging to her back. When they finally separated, Janzi realized it had all been a hallucination. Seeing she was safe, Zhenliu set off to finish the GZ. After he killed it, a white-haired, one-eyed man appeared, and after confirming the GZ was dead, he let out a villain's laugh and then turned to the two with a strange request. He wanted them to kill another and save someone. Janzi and Zhenliu were surprised, but since there was money involved, they asked his identity, only to learn he was actually Dr. Yu Zuomei himself, the infamous experimental surgeon. He was still alive, kept going by tubes and machines, called the keystone of patient treatment by the cult, because all their prosthetics and tech came from him. Today, he had 2 special patients and wanted Janzi and Zhenliu to kill the one who was dying, so he could die as a human instead of turning into a GZ. If the patient died naturally, he'd become a GZ because of the strange disease. At the onset, Yu Zuomei had built this special room to slow the illness, cutting off infected parts and replacing them with machines, but it could only delay things. Eventually, the patient would die and become a GZ. Now, with the body at its limit, Yu Zuomei begged Zhenliu to kill the patient like he killed Jizi, so he could die with his humanity. After some effort, Zhenliu easily entered the dying patient's body, and though he could, Zhenliu could finish the task, but first wanted to see if the dying bandaged woman had any last wish, and she did. She just wanted to see the blue sky one final time. The doctor said she couldn't be moved from her machines, but Janzi pushed open the door and insisted they try. It was only a few meters to the corridor, so together, the 3 of them carefully shifted the bed and the equipment, every tug on a cable causing the patient terrible pain. With the doctor quietly untangling wires and the others gently moving everything, they finally got her to the corridor, where she saw the vast sky above. As she lay with her head turned to the sky, the building filled with noise, but the doctor ignored it, wanting only to stay at her side. Once her last wish was fulfilled, she finally closed her eyes, and though it was hard, Zhenliu reached out with the hand that could kill Jizi, slipped into her body, and after struggling inside himself, squeezed the life organ, ending her pain at last. Afterward, Janzi found a final message on the doctor's tablet and handed it over to Dr. Yu Zuomei. Meanwhile, in the street, a woman from the protest march, dodging a stone, fell and struck her head, instantly losing consciousness. The protesters angrily accused the immortal cult of violence, but the truth was the protesters had thrown the first stone and the cultists had only retaliated. The crowd, rather than getting bolder, scattered and withdrew to their headquarters, anxious about their injured leader. Just then, another member rushed in with shocking news. The GZ kept in the immortal cult's basement had been killed. The group's new leader stepped up and declared that Mitsuhashi, their old leader, was dead, then gave a fiery speech calling everyone to avenge her. Soon, they blocked every road in and out of the cult. Naito, who'd been acting as a spy, was soon discovered and met a brutal end at the hands of the new leader, spurring the living people members to even greater rage. The heavily armed protest group faced a cult full of wounded, who could only help each other flee. Eventually, everyone abandoned the building. Dr. Yu Zuomei and Janzi joined the survivors, and seeing everyone's despair, Zhenliu wondered if this was all because he had killed the GZ in the basement. But Yu Zuomei, once the master of the building, cared little now. Everything had been made for his beloved, and with her gone, it was all meaningless. At first, it had been just the 2 of them there. Then wounded people started arriving and he treated them to make his lover happy, nothing more. He'd never really been a doctor. While everyone regrouped, Janzi asked about rescue, but they didn't know any doctor except for Dr. Rob B, who had already left. As Janzi wondered how to find him, Yu Zuomei went up to the rooftop, holding his lover's body and turning their badge in his hand, lost in memories. Then he looked at his beloved, kissed her gently, and in the quiet, peaceful moment, put a gun to his own head. By the time Janzi and Zhenliu reached him, Yu Zuomei had already followed his lover to paradise. Zhenliu hated himself, believing his hands could only bring death, but thankfully Janzi was there to pull him back from his spiral of self-blame. Meanwhile, the new living people leader took over all the cult's equipment, his ambition clear. He wanted to build a new city and order, ruling as the only leader. But he didn't know there was still one GZ hidden in the underground garage. After Yu Zuomei died for love, all that was left was a crow's head marked with a special emblem, identical to the mark on Janzi's ray gun. This was the key clue to the paradise the siblings sought. As Janzi wondered what to do next, Zhenliu pried open his mouth and showed that the tooth broken by the thugs had already regrown. What a strange guy. Before Zhanzi could check it, the ground suddenly shook with an earthquake that set off landmines. The two ran for safety and soon heard a building collapse nearby. They hurried to the scene, hoping to scavenge something valuable. Zhenliu found a tunnel into the ruins, but just as he was about to go in, a young man named Lei crawled out. He'd also come looking for supplies and was a notorious information broker. His price is steep, but Zhanzi didn't care and asked directly for news about the two people in the photo, the special mark, or any clue to paradise. When the broker saw what she wanted, he even moved his car right up against the wall, then took out his information board. One piece of intel, 10,000 yuan. After getting paid, the broker launched into story mode. There are three main theories about what caused the world-ending catastrophe. The first is the popular asteroid impact theory. Second is the alien invasion theory, which claims the man-eating ZZ are extraterrestrial. People even reported seeing figures flying in the sky before the disaster. The third theory is war, and according to rumor, somewhere in pre-disaster Japan, that place in Japan was hit by a terrifying attack, which escalated into war, and some kind of special weapon was even used. That's where the story ended, but Zhanzi wasn't buying it. He never got to the part about the special symbol, so it was obvious the broker was just dragging it out for more money. But Zhenliu enjoyed the stories and handed over another 10,000, prompting the broker to continue with a tale from his own life. Once, he lived in a camp run by 30 adult women who used a walled school as their base. Most men who entered were killed, with only the healthiest, most handsome kept alive. These became breeding stock, made to do chores and supply human essence. The broker was number 11 among them, and after an encounter with a couple, soon one of the women got pregnant. If she gave birth to a girl, the child would be granted human status and could live in town. But if it was a boy, he'd be raised as livestock by the men. Half a year later, the couple tried to escape with their baby and number 11, but were caught. Only number 11 made it out alive, and the couple was hanged at the town gate. With the tale over, not even Zhenliu was satisfied, and Zhanzi wiped the number off the broker's arm with his sleeve, easily erasing it. Clearly the broker had lied, and Zhanzi realized he'd moved his car earlier to hide something. After the broker drove away, a sign was revealed behind his car, showing the very special mark they were searching for. It belonged to Highland Academy. Zhenliu and Zhanzi entered the building to search, but it had already been looted. In a corner, Zhanzi found a strange drawing of a little person, and on the back, it turned out to be a speech by the Academy's headmaster. As he read, Zhenliu called from the third floor. They'd found a weird bird mark on the wall. They assumed it was just graffiti copying the school's symbol, and Zhenliu didn't think this place was the paradise he was searching for, since there was no one who looked like him. He was ready to give up on this lead, but Zhanzi showed him the headmaster's speech, which called society endurance hell and the academy paradise, and listed 2 main bases and 18 branches, especially Magnetic City and Nura Base, as most promising. One strange student at the academy had supernatural abilities and secret knowledge. He told Kunai to use his gift to sense the air, where Kunai faintly picked up a flash like a sword, just as a girl screamed nearby. She'd mysteriously suffered a deep cut on her leg, but Asuluo, the odd student, simply touched it and it healed instantly. That night, he visited Kunai's room, cut the school's surveillance, and said goodbye. He'd discovered the truth about his own birth and then vanished. Sensing something was wrong, Kunai tracked him to the balcony where Asuluo's back grew strange wings covered in symbols. With a gentle leap, he wrapped a power line around his neck and soared high into the air. Kunai jumped after him in desperation, and with his last bit of strength, Asuluo brought him safely to the ground. After that, Kunai was truly alone. He and Asuluo had been the first and only students of the Academy's inaugural class, and each other's only friend. But soon, Kunai found new companionship. His senior quietly joined him while he drew, and as they grew up, they naturally became inseparable. One day, holding his girlfriend, Kunai sensed something bad. Whoever killed Asuluo would soon come for his senior. Life at the academy continued. Then, a group of foreigners arrived, and Miss Qingdao, who was always with them, noticed something odd about the senior's health and checked on her that night. Meanwhile, Maimeiji kept staring at the rafters, always seeing something no one else could. Later in class, everyone realized the senior was missing. Qingdao had taken her away, saying she'd be gone for a while. At the same time, the academy leaders held an emergency meeting. First, they named Miss Qingdao vice principal, which angered Dr. Yuandu, who wanted to know why, but the principal simply said she was his most trusted person. Dr. Yuandu was furious, since everyone believed she was the one most likely to succeed as principal. Then came the second reason for the meeting. The senior was pregnant. 2 hours earlier, broker number 11 had found Zhenliu and Zhanzi again, wanting to know if his child was alive, because his wild story was actually true. He really was breeder number 11 and had been seeking a chance for revenge, and the base happened to be near Ibaraki, where Zhenliu and Zhanzi were headed, so they could travel together and catch a ride. After all, even by car, the trip would take hours. When the three reached the walled town, number 11 disguised Zhenliu to help him sneak in. As the siblings approached, they found a gaping hole in the wall and a chaotic mess inside, but clear signs people had lived there. While searching for clues, Zhenliu kicked over a bucket but found a usable sleeping bag. At the same time, Jianzi discovered a strange diary with a single page marked only by a date. Just as they were about to discuss it, the room suddenly turned freezing cold, water on the floor icing over, and frost sealing the walls. Clearly, Azizi's power was at work. Jianzi looked for the source but was soon so cold he could hardly keep his eyes open, while Zhenliu was nearly at his limit too. Just then, he caught a glimpse of the Zizi's shadow, and after a quick aim, Jianzi fired, blasting a hole in the ceiling and dispelling the cold, at least for the moment. But the danger hadn't passed. The Zizi was still lurking, so they decided to flee. On the way, Jianzi stopped, took a mouthful of water, and dashed upstairs. As he moved through the corridor, the Zizi appeared by the window, forming a water sphere that froze everything it touched. But Jianzi spat out the water in his mouth, blocking the Zizi's attack, having figured out the principle of its power. He counterattacked, shooting and splitting the monster in two, but the part that fell to the floor had no core and slipped away, so the Zizi escaped again. Its presence probably meant the other residents were long dead. There hadn't been a single living person. Number 11 was devastated, but just then, distant shouts echoed. It was number 6 and number 9, former breeders from the same camp as number 11. The siblings ran to them and saw that inside the Zizi's frozen sphere, a child sat with a face full of tears, number 11's own child. The day before, the three had come to this walled town searching for the child, but all they found was a Zizi with freezing powers and no humans left. Just as they despaired, they heard the call from number 6 and number 9, who'd survived after escaping through a hole created by the Zizi during its attack a month before. While number 11's baby's cries distracted everyone, that baby, now named 15, had grown healthy in the new base, and number 11 finally reunited with his child. But that night, as everyone slept, the temperature plummeted again. The Zizi was attacking with its freezing power. Thankfully, Jianzi and Zhenliu woke up and got everyone out, but 3 were missing: number 11, his child, and the camp leader. Jianzi ran in and found the leader carrying number 11 and his child out of the bedroom, and grabbing the child, he ran for safety. No matter how far he went, the cold followed. It felt as if the Zizi was stalking them. Eventually, exhausted and nearly frozen, he stopped. Zhenliu caught up, took the child and set him aside, and suddenly the cold dissipated. The freezing power had come from the child himself, carrying a Zizi's aura. Only when the child awoke and burst from the ice did the chill vanish for good. With number 11's wish granted, it was time to head for the Highland Academy's Xiqing base. They needed a car, and number 11 gladly gave them his beloved Wulin Hongguang, since he had no more reason to run, and there were better vehicles at the camp anyway. After a short farewell, Jianzi drove off to start their new journey, but the car stalled after barely 2 meters. That night, 15 quietly sat on the ground, hiding a secret, while his father's face was covered in blood and a corpse with a slit throat lay nearby. Back then, when number 11 escaped, it was this man who betrayed him, leading to the couple's execution at the town gate. This was number 11's long-awaited revenge for his child's mother. He drove away, leaving the past behind. Meanwhile, at Highland Academy, Shixiang's child was about to be born, so he could finally see his beloved Koopa again. Vice Principal Miss Qingdao announced that the children would soon welcome a new companion, the 5th cohort at Highland Academy. Childbirth always brings pain, and Shixiang writhed in agony, shouting his lover's name as Kunai, far away, sensed his pain and shared it with his powers. The birth went well, but the event disrupted the principal's long-standing plans. Now, 8 warriors had awakened from fake death states and were sent elsewhere, each armed with a powerful ray weapon. Only one piece remained: the children of the academy. But as time passed, all the children, even the newest ones, developed the black spot disease, because every single one, all the children, even the newest, had been created by the robot Minna using advanced biotechnology. But now, an unexpected variable had appeared: the child born to Shixiang and Kunai. The principal decided to gamble everything on this child, planning to transplant his own consciousness into the child's mind, hoping to achieve immortality. But the vessel needed to mature to age 15 for the transfer, and the principal clearly couldn't survive that long, though he had a backup plan. He intended to first transfer his mind into Miss Qingdao, which was why he promoted her to vice principal. In the academy's tomato garden, Mai Meiji, busy watering, heard a sad melody. She found a little girl in sunglasses playing alone by the high wall. Mai Meiji asked why she didn't play with the others, but the girl said she'd only caused trouble and began to cry. Mai Meiji offered her handkerchief to dry the tears, but as soon as she removed the girl's glasses, the wall transformed. Mechanical claws and steel needles stretched out Mai Meiji's deepest fear. She collapsed unconscious and woke up later in the infirmary with Skeleton lying beside her, claiming she had synchronized with the pregnant senior and was still weak, but at least she was okay. Mai Meiji realized she'd fallen into a hallucination. Just by meeting the child's eyes, you saw your greatest fear, which was why the girl always wore sunglasses and stayed alone. Yet Mai Meiji herself always saw things others couldn't, like ghostly figures floating or visions of the future, sometimes 10 seconds ahead, sometimes years. Right now, she saw Skeleton transform into a ZZ and was terrified, but by silently chanting for it to disappear, she made the nightmare vanish. When she left the infirmary, the sunglassed child was waiting outside to return her handkerchief and apologize. Seeing her so guilty, Meimeji's heart ached. She gently removed the girl's glasses again, though the child tried to stop her. It was too late, the ability had triggered. Meimeji was soon seized by those sharp steel needles, just like in her hospital bed nightmare. But again, she focused and willed the illusion away. When it vanished, she shone like a ray of hope in the child's eyes. Meanwhile, in the power room, a group of engineers busily worked under Mina's direction, not even knowing what they were building, just following the robot's commands. Miss Qingdao and Dr. Yuandu met in the conference room, clearly scheming something behind the principal's back, planning to act as soon as the gate to the outside was opened. They wanted to discuss the plan further, but it was time to feed the baby. Dr. Yuandu was the perfect, gentle nanny, tending to the child, though there was another baby identical to it lying beside. The next day, the whole academy was summoned to the pool. Even the long-missing senior appeared. Once everyone was gathered, Mina announced a crucial test ahead, instructing them to choose the right path if there was no answer, and officially calling them all ZZ, declaring their duty to reach the outside world. After dismissal, some students felt uneasy, suspecting ZZ was their forgotten real name. That night, students anxiously discussed the upcoming test, while in the power room, Mina suddenly powered down, plunging the whole hall into darkness. Elsewhere, Zhanzi and Zhenliu drove the Shiziwan 2 toward Magnetic City, but the ruined roads slowed them and it took all day. That night, Zhenliu saw smoke rising from Magnetic City, the base ablaze with light where people were inspecting machines. To Zhanzi's shock, the man in charge was Robin, the hero of his youth, now a demon. Was it a sudden change of heart, or had he always worn a mask? Following directions, the siblings arrived at a thriving market, bustling with life and food just like the old Asakusa racing factory. But to eat, you couldn't pay with old cash, only the unique grave tokens of this place. Each person could get 5 by applying for residency through the legendary Fuxing province, a group dedicated to reviving old civilization and long rumored in conspiracy tales. During registration, Zhenliu went straight to the point. He wanted the tokens, but had to take a blue background ID photo and fill out detailed info. Thankfully, they passed review and received their grave tokens. As usual, Zhanzi asked after Robin and was surprised everyone here knew him as the director. They could meet him at the filtration facility in 2 hours. The filtration plant was actually the old Xicheng base of Highland Academy, but they'd have to wait, so they searched for lodging. Every house was spotless. Zhanzi hurried to the filtration facility, unable to contain his excitement at seeing Robin again after all these years, and when Robin's voice rang out, he called to him, ready to pour out years of longing, only to see Robin stunned at the sight before him, unable to believe his eyes. ChatGPT said, to his shock, Robin realized that Haruki's mind now lived inside his sister Tongzi's body. Her subtle expressions and tone were unmistakably Haruki's, and the brain-switching surgery by Dr. Zuitian had actually succeeded. But Robin didn't know where the doctor had gone. He'd left to chase after him and lost his trail, and when he returned, the orphanage ship was already empty. 2 years ago, he found this place, which, before the disaster, had developed genetically modified crops for harsh environments. After some cleanup, the fields thrived and more people gathered, including the Fuxing province group, and gradually the town formed. The name Filtration Facility came from Robin converting the base's automatic water filter to hand operation, and Fuxing province then made it both a water boiler and power generator. Robin wanted Zhanzi to enjoy a proper bath, showing off his ability to create a town like paradise, but for some reason, Zhanzi felt a strange fear. After his bath, Zhanzi found his clothes missing, and Robin called him into a room with a hidden silver bracelet. Eager to run a little experiment, he was dying to know who really lived inside that head. Suddenly, Highland Academy's dome exploded with heavy bombardment. Paradise became a wreck in moments. Everything plunged into darkness and despair. Mina, the super AI terminal, had crashed. The power room doors wouldn't open, and all systems failed. The students still wondered about the coming test, but 3 children stared at the sky chanting about danger, and then, just as they feared, the dome shattered. Chaos erupted. Even the nursery was hit, and Dr. Yuandu thought it was part of the principal's Sky Shield plan, but it wasn't. It was a military strike aimed right at the principal's return. Thankfully, the students weren't hurt and gathered in a safe area, but some were still in swim class, which was likely the safest spot. So others planned to relocate there while Meimeji wanted to investigate the hole blasted in the high wall. Unwilling to let her go alone, 4 second-year students went with her while Kunai led the rest toward the pool and to search for the senior. Bombs still fell. The assistant was paralyzed with fear, so the principal ran for his life while Dr. Yuandu rushed through the nursery because she couldn't tell the identical babies apart and quickly marked one for safety, knowing only she and Miss Qingdao knew about the clone. Everyone else thought the senior had twins, and when asked which baby to return, Dr. Yuandu hesitated, having mixed them up during the blast. She lied, saying the one with the circle mark was the real one and delivered the baby to the senior, while Miss Qingdao, after checking the student's safety, took the chance to launch the Noah plan to protect the children. Dr. Yuandu reached the senior's room and returned the baby, relieved to find both mother and child unharmed. As they looked for the baby's father, the old principal burst in and lunged for the infant, desperate to seize the key to his plan, but the mother refused. The principal ordered Mina the robot to snatch the baby, and just as it almost succeeded, the senior's eyes glowed blue and blood-red vines grew over her body, wrapping tightly around herself and her child. The principal lost his temper and tried to grab the baby, but the vines wrapped around him too. Meanwhile, the 4 students outside saw the world beyond the wall for the first time, mistaking it for the weight test their teacher described. They set off to explore the outside only to find it nothing like the comfort of the academy. No constant temperature, annoying bugs, rough ground. Mei-Meiji wanted to turn back for her close friend, but Yin Hexen wanted to press on, and Baze loyally followed Mei-Meiji. After walking for ages and failing to return, they realized they were lost in the forest, so they just kept going straight, hoping eventually to hit the round bridge and follow the wall back. Finally, after walking for a long time, after walking for quite a while, they stumbled upon a creek, and just as they were celebrating their luck, the ground suddenly gave way beneath Mei-Meiji's feet. Without hesitation, Bai leapt after her, managing to shield Mei-Meiji from harm so she was safe, while Bai only suffered some scrapes and bruises. Mei-Meiji, curious, asked why Bai always tried to save her. "Because I love Mei-Meiji," Bai confessed, "and to save you, I'd take any number of wounds, if only you could forgive me." Not long before, Zhanzi had gotten news about his childhood idol Robin and gone to the filtration plant alone, leaving Zhenliu behind for 2.5 days. Unable to stand the waiting any longer, Zhenliu finally set out for the filtration facility, only to be stopped by security before he could even reach the entrance. He tried to get information and, to his surprise, the guard seemed to be waiting for him, wearing a sleazy grin and claiming that woman had been in Robin's room for days, with suspicious sounds coming from inside every night. Even Zhenliu couldn't ignore the implication and demanded entry, but without a permit, the guard refused, so Zhenliu threw them into the river and marched to the building, only to find more guards, so he put them to sleep too. Meanwhile, Zhanzi was tied to Robin's bed, his eyes dull, barely able to rest as flashes of his childhood memories swam through his mind. Memories that shouldn't have been his. Was his sister's consciousness still somewhere inside this body? Or was his brain just adapting? Maybe he was slowly becoming his sister, but there was something off about Robin's reaction when they reunited. How Zhanzi wished Zhenliu was by his side. Just then the door opened and Zhenliu found him in this pitiful state. But they weren't alone. Footsteps echoed and Robin entered, staring straight at Zhenliu without fear, boldly challenging him and threatening to call security, but it was pointless. Robin reached into his pocket, fumbling for a key to open a door, but his nerves got the better of him and he dropped it. By then, Zhenliu had closed in, cornering Robin, who made a desperate dash but was easily thrown back. Repeated attempts to break free failed, and in frustration, Robin tried to fight but was knocked out cold by a single punch. Maybe all his scheming had left him weak, but Zhenliu didn't stop there. He unleashed blow after blow, letting out all his fury until Zhanzi yelled for him to stop. Zhanzi didn't want Robin to die. Zhenliu was shocked, but after much hesitation, finally released his grip, unable to defy Zhanzi's plea. When they left the filtration plant, Zhenliu confessed his feelings yet again, though he'd already been rejected 3 or 4 times. Still, he had to try. He loved Zhanzi, not as just Haruki's brain in his sister's body, but as the one and only Zhanzi, the person he wanted to protect, even if Zhanzi was supposed to be his bodyguard. With everything settled, Zhanzi took out his treasured photo and tore it into pieces, ready to let go of the past. But Zhenliu couldn't forgive Robin. If they met again, he swore it would be Robin's end. That night, when the Fuxing province staff noticed the filtration plant was empty, they came to investigate, found Robin's dropped key, and opened the door he'd tried to unlock, only to find a ZZ still alive and connected to a human. It turned out Robin had been conducting secret experiments all along, though Zhenliu and Zhanzi had no idea. They simply continued their journey in search of paradise.